Hello, and thank you for joining me for Google 101. This is Jill Ehrman, Instructional Technology Coordinator for Forsyth County Schools. Today we're going to look at some of the ways you can use G Suite in your classroom. First, let's look at this big news from Google. You just heard me refer to Google Apps for Education as G Suite. This is a name change that Google has made, so just be aware if you hear either one of those terms, they're referring to the same thing. What can I do with my Google Drive? Well, first of all, it's important to know what a Google Drive is. Google Drive is a storage place. Google Drive is not all of these other things. Those are your Google Apps, or that's what makes up G Suite. The thing that is really awesome about our school Google Drives is that they have unlimited storage. So where we get caught up with our H drives, that will never happen with our Google Drive. You can think of it as a place where you could bring everything over. So you could slide things straight from your H drive into your Google Drive and have access to them 24/7 anywhere you have an internet connection. I think that makes Google Drive pretty powerful. Then along with Google Drive, you have these applications, docs, slides, sheets, forms, and drawings that can be made and stored in your Google Drive. You can also download them in different formats. So if you have a Google Doc stored in your Google Drive, you could download it in a Microsoft Word format. Let's take a look at some of the uses that we have with our Google Docs. First of all, collaboration with colleagues. This is one of the things that I love about Google. Instead of, like the olden days, when we would email a project around to the different people who are collaborating, in Google Docs you simply use the Share button up here in the right-hand corner and share a link with all of your collaborators. And then you all jump on to the same document, and you can even be on it at the same time. The one that you see on the screen is Slides, which takes the place of PowerPoint in Microsoft. And if I was on this Slides presentation working on it, and maybe I'm up here working on slide number 1, my collaborators could be on any of these other slides working at the same time. You could consider using Google Slides with your students when they have group projects to put together, and then students can be responsible for different slides in the same presentation. A way to use Google Docs would be to keep a running record of your meeting notes. When your team meets, you can have a template ready where you take notes. You can use that share button to share the notes with everybody on your team. You could share it out with your principal. And then as time goes on, you can just keep adding using that same template, using that same link. So you can go back to notes from previous meetings very easily just by scrolling through your document. Team drives are a pretty new thing that Google has just put out, and we do have access to this in Forsyth County Schools. You can see right under where it says My Drive, there are team drives, and this banner at the top changes, so you can see very clearly that you are no longer in your own drive, but in team drives. The one you're looking at here, we use at County Office for our instructional technology team. And you can see that we have 7 members, and it's very simple to add members simply by clicking on Add Members and finding them in our Forsyth County Schools directory. Keep in mind, if you decide to use team drives, that when you put something in a team drive, you no longer own it. It is then owned by the team. Team drives are like our share drives, but again, because they are part of Google Drive, they're unlimited, so you don't need to worry about how much you have in it. Although, don't use that as an excuse to have it cluttered up. You should still have a really nice folder structure and keep track of what's going in there, so as things are no longer needed, you could delete them. In Google Docs, you'll find this tool called Revision History. Revision history is useful for a number of reasons, and one of them is to improve the writing process. As you can see over along the right-hand side, there's a whole pane of revisions. So if you were using this with your students, you would be able to see every revision from the first draft to their final copy. Along with that idea is setting up a peer review system in your classroom. When students share their documents, they can share and give other students just commenting access as opposed to editing access, and so other students can leave comments on their paper. With Google Docs, we can publish student work in a number of ways. It's very simple to grab a sharing link and embed something in its learning, to turn something in through its learning. It's very simple to make a Google site, which is a website, and publish student work there. Maybe there's a good use for those as a student portfolio. That would be one idea. So think about all the ways you could publish student work using Google Docs. Translate is another really cool tool in Google. We know in Forsyth County schools we have a very diverse population and we have a lot of different languages represented. Sometimes students come to us without a good grasp of English, or we have parents that don't have a good grasp of English. And now we have this tool that makes it very simple for us to translate our communications into their language to help make a smoother communication between school and home. Here's another nice use for Google Docs. What you see here is a Google Sheet, and it's being used to coordinate sign-ups for training dates. Think of all the ways that you could use a sheet for sign-ups. Maybe you would have students sign up for particular presentation times, or maybe you'd have your staff sign up for who's bringing what to the next potluck. One of my favorite features in Google Docs is the Explore button. If you're familiar with research, Explore took the place of research in Google Docs, and it's available in Docs, in Sheets, and in Slides. You'll find this symbol down in the lower right-hand corner, and when you click on it, you'll get this Explore pane. And what's in the pane is based on whatever you're working on. So in this Google Doc, we were working on a Civil War group project. And so what came up in our panel are all kinds of suggestions having to do with the Civil War. A really neat feature of Explore is that when you click on something, it will cite it for you in your paper. So you'll have the citation as a footnote, and it does offer several different citation formats. Being interactive is one of the great things about Google Apps. Think of it this way. There are things that you can do with Google Apps that you couldn't do with paper and pencil in your classroom. And that's really what we want to use technology for. If all you're doing is replacing, then really, what's the point? So think about ways that you can use Google Apps interactively. For example, on the slide you're looking at now, I've embedded a YouTube video. You can embed YouTube videos in slides presentations, and you can also embed videos right out of your Google Drive. Here's another thing I'd like you to check out. Here is a Google Doc, and you're going to see something happen on this Google Doc that you would not see happen on a student's worksheet if it was just laying on their desk. The question posed by the teacher is to use what you've learned about magnets to describe what causes this windmill to continuously turn, and it's not connected to electricity. If this was on a worksheet, you might ask students to imagine what it looks like if it's turning, but with a Google Doc, they can bring it up, they can actually see it turn, they can see that there is purple on the bottom, red on the top, and that each blade of the windmill also has a red magnet and a purple magnet. And so they could use those colors to refer to something special about those magnets and then describe why this windmill is turning. When you get this presentation, you can click through and there's another one on the solar system and you can take a look at that one as well. With Google Apps, you can go nearly paperless. Instead of making copies, you can link files in our learning management system, It's Learning. So think about that as you are assigning things and as you are creating things. Is there a way to give students an electronic copy as opposed to a paper copy? You could almost challenge yourself to see how much less paper you can use. Google Forms is one of my favorite Google apps, and Forms can be used for many things. You know that it's a way to ask questions of your audience. So administering assessments would be one way to use Google Forms. After your students or your audience, whoever they are, takes your assessment, all that data flows right into a Google Sheet. Here's another way to use Google Forms. I've created Google Learning Paths, so when you're finished watching this video, you can click on the Google Learning Paths to learn about any of the Google apps you want to. You'll get to choose which one, and then you'll be given many options that you can look at for each one. As you can see in the explanation over here, it talks about a threaded form, and that's a technique of making a form so that when you provide multiple answers, depending on how your user answers the question, it will take them to different places in the form to either present information or to ask more questions. You could use forms to survey your students' interests, and once you know what they're interested in, that will help you to personalize their learning. Collecting observation feedback is another way to use Google Forms. As I said before, when you use forms, all that information goes into a Google Sheet. And one of the things that you can do with a sheet is then build it out with that data. So as you can see on the sheet that's shown here, there's a tab called Form Responses 1. That's the default tab. That's the one that is generally made by a form flowing into a sheet. But you can also see that more tabs have been made on this particular sheet. And so what we've done is we've built out these different tabs showing the different standards that have been surveyed in this particular form going to a sheet. So instead of having to look at everything on one sheet, we could click on these different tabs to see things just about phonics or just about fluency. Another way to use forms would be to document our parent contacts. So you could have this form set up on your iPhone, for example, so that when you make a parent contact, you just quickly fill in these different blanks on your form, and right in your drive, you'll have a Google Sheet with all of that contact information documented. Another way that I've seen some teachers and I've seen some ITSs and media specialists use Google Forms is to keep track of their to-do lists. Again, some of them keep these on their phones, and that way as they're seeing different people who are asking them to do different things for them, they can quickly go through their form and jot down what the need is, and then they can go back to that sheet to prioritize their work. I think Google has totally awesome presentations with their Google Slides app. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is that Google does not offer very many exciting templates, but if you go to this website called Slides Carnival, you'll see all kinds of wonderful templates there, and many of them are free. The template that you see on this page right here is from Slides Carnival. And what you'll get with those templates is not just the opening page, but you'll get somewhere around 20 or 25 different pages all in that same theme. So it really gives your presentations a nice unified look. And finally, whenever you're using Google Apps, you can use add-ons and extensions. And some of the add-ons I like are Autocrat and Avery Label Merge. And for both of these, you use a sheet and you can create something from that sheet. With Autocrat, you start with a form which flows into your sheet, and then you have a template in a doc. What you're seeing on the screen right now is that template. And then you apply tags, and your template will pull from the sheet based on those tags to fill in the template. Now, how would this be nice? Well, I saw one of our ITSs use Autocrat for responding to signups for Tech Fair, and this allowed her to very easily have something that's sent right out to the person who signed up. So it's all automatic and takes a lot of work off your plate once you have it set up. Creating labels from a sheet is also very simple. I used this for a DCD one time where I had a sheet with all of the people who were coming to my presentation, and I simply used Avery Label Merge with that, and I was able to produce name tags. You can use any of the fields that are in your sheet on your name tag, so I could have the person's name along with the school they came from, for example. I could also put on their tag if they were a beginner, an intermediate, or an advanced user, and that might be useful as we're doing group work throughout the presentation. So now that you've seen some of the different ways that you can use Google Apps, are you ready to dig in on your own? Well, if you are, you can go to this URL, gsuite.google.com/learning-center, and you'll see all kinds of different tutorials there to help you in your Google journey. Be sure to join FCS Google on its learning. There's no key to join, and we encourage everyone to get into FCS Google. You'll find many docs and how-to videos there to, again, help you on your Google journey. And if you're really ready to dig in, think about getting Google certified. There are different levels of certification. There is Educator 1, which is the basic level, and then an advanced level with Educator 2. You may have seen on our opening slide that I have an administrator certification, and that has to do with if you're going to keep up with the Google Admin Console, so that would be something for people at county office to consider doing. And there are also some certifications for Google Certified Innovator and for presenters. So think about any of those certifications that fit with your educational goals. Thank you for joining me today.